So here you can see two egrets overlooking the arroyo that is adjacent to our townhome development right here. So there's a nice path here, and then up here are the two, and I actually think there they go. There's actually three of them. Two of them just flew away. Egrets. There they are. You get a great view right there. Beautiful.
Life sciences consultant Mike Huckman is one of the more than 1.6 million U.S. citizens now living in Mexico. He was attracted to the small town of San Miguel de Allende by the warmth and culture he experienced the very first time he visited more than 8 years ago. So, what does it take to take up residence, even temporarily, in Mexico? In this podcast, Mike shares his journey and some of the beauty he has found living abroad, including the colorful birds living in his new backyard. I'm Ramona Schindelheim. This is Birds and Nerds. Mike, thanks for joining me from Mexico. I really appreciate it.
Ramona, it's a privilege and it's an honor to have an invitation to appear on Birds and Nerds. I think I somewhat checked the bird box, but I definitely don't think I checked the nerd box, but here I am.
I don't know. You're my nerd on international migration. This is how I'm going to put it. Moving from the U.S. to Mexico, and I that's what I really am fascinated by. So you're my nerd on that. Birds, you don't have to be an expert on it. You just have to love them.
Well, I'm definitely not an expert either on moving to Mexico, Ramona. I mean, I can speak to what our personal experience is and what our points of view are and what we've observed anecdotally, but I am by no means an expert on moving out of the country to San Miguel de Allende in Mexico or on San Miguel de Allende either, but I do know some things.
I do think you know something. So tell me what I want to, I know I've known you for a long time, and, we both journalists for a long time, and we both have moved on into different, iterations of storytelling and helping people tell their story. Tell me a little bit first about your background and, where you are today.
Ramona, you and I go way back. I hate to say it, but it's 25 years since we were
At
both
least, yes.
at CNBC. So a similar path, I think, career path to you. So I got a broadcast journalism degree from my beloved alma mater, the University of Southern California. Fight on, go Trojans. And then I started the stereotypical vagabond TV news reporter journeyman career. So back in the day, since you're in Los Angeles, I was an intern in my senior year at USC at what was then known as KNXT. So KNXT is now KCBS, but at that time it was called KNXT. So it was the CBS owned and operated station in Los Angeles. And I had the honor here too to work as an intern in the then stellar and well-known and highly decorated investigative unit at Channel 2 in LA. There was a reporter at the time named Jim Mitchell, who was supported by an amazing group of producers. And I got to be a grunt researcher. So this is, of course, back in the early 80s. And I used to have to do a lot of microfiche research in the library at UCLA and
Go
other.
Bruins. No.
Yeah, not. But that's why I said it under my breath, Ramona. And I'm toiling away as an unpaid intern at Channel 2 in LA. And a friend of mine after graduation said, hey, there's an opening for a reporter in Great Falls, Montana. So I jumped on it and I hounded the then news director, who then went on to work at KCOP in Los Angeles and at KNBC, Ed Coughlin. You may or may not know him. And I pestered him for 3 weeks. I wore him down. So I always say, Ramona, that I've learned that there is a fine line between being a pest and being persistent. And I think I threaded that needle fairly well, because I distinctly remember, Ramona, one day in these 3 weeks, and I used to wait till every other day to ring him again. He put me on hold, and then he gets back on and he says, "You want a job?" And of course I said yes. I didn't even ask what I was going to get
That's
paid.
amazing. Yeah.
It was $10,700 a year in 1983 in Great Falls, Montana. But Ramona, I couldn't care less. I packed up my stuff. I flew up there sight unseen. It was 22 degrees below zero, my first Christmas in Great Falls, Montana. And I'm an LA native. I didn't know what I was doing, 21 years old, fresh out of college. So I went to Great Falls, then to Billings, then to Boise, then to Tucson, then to Detroit. And then, apropos of nothing, Ramona, I was hired by CNBC. I had no business background. I had no econ. I took Econ 101 and 102 at USC. So I remembered supply and demand, but that was kind of about it. But
I'm going to interrupt you there and tell you something very important. You and I joined CNBC during an era where there were so many, bless them, business people, but no storytellers. And I came in around the time you did, and I still remember Bruno Cohen was the one who hired me, and he said, "No, I need you. I need storytellers." And that's what you brought to that table. And you learned the business.
yes, you learn the business, you climb that learning curve. And it was Bruno and it was Mark Huckman at the time who hired me. And the only reason I got an interview, Ramona, going back to the old cliche adage of it's not what you know, it's who you know, is because my agent and Mark Huckman had worked together previously in their careers. So that opened the door. But to your point, that's what I tell people too. They needed more people who knew how to make television and maybe had half a brain to really climb that steep learning curve about the markets, about the economy, about particular sectors. And the only reason that I have the career that I have now, and we can get into that if you want to, is because one day early in my tenure at CNBC, Ramona, the then managing editor called me into her office and said, "How would you like to cover pharma?" And only because I answered that question yes is the reason that I have the life and the career that I have today. And I serendipitously, Ramona, discovered my professional passion for the life sciences and for pharmaceuticals and for biotechnology and for medical technology is because, apropos of nothing, I was asked to cover pharma at CNBC.
I totally understand your entire trajectory, because very similar to me, mine was all in TV and radio and story. I see storytelling because I think that's the important component. And when Bruno asked me to come over and produce Power Lunch, I was like, well, okay, I know. I remember writing about the Dow closing. That's what I knew. I would write the little, 10 seconds in the Dow closed at, and probably back then it was Dow closed at 4,000, as opposed to today.
We're dating ourselves here.
I know, but we've earned it. That's what I say. But I love that changed your pathway, and that it did to me too, because now I'm a business journalist, freelance business journalist. Birds are my love and my passion, and that's why I do the podcast. But that's the bread and butter is I am a business journalist at covering work because I developed a passion for it.
Ramona, I distinctly remember repeatedly pitching you as the senior producer on Power Lunch. Please give me a minute 30. I need to do this story. It's super important. This is a big deal. And having to educate everybody on why it mattered. So during my time at CNBC, I had developed a number of contacts in public relations and corporate communications. And a handful of them kept saying, "Mike, if you ever get tired of what you're doing at CNBC, we think you'd be great on the proverbial dark side." And I kept putting it off and putting it off. And then ultimately, after 10 years at CNBC, where I'd kind of been there and done that, Ramona, You cover JP Morgan Healthcare Conference, you cover the big oncology conference, you cover the big diabetes conference, all these meetings. It's a step and repeat situation to a certain extent. And so I gave it a lot of careful thought and finally decided to cross over to the proverbial dark side in 2010 and start this second career. And that is as a corporate communications consultant, helping primarily life sciences executives tell their stories in a better, stronger, more compelling, easier to understand way.
I mean, I guess it was last year you moved to Mexico, I believe.
Yes,
Yes.
2025.
Yeah. And so what made you make that decision? I want to know that as on like at a personal level. Why did you decide that you wanted to move? And then we can get into some of the things that you had to do to migrate.
Sure. First of all, YOLO. You only live once. And at 64 years old now, that's definitely a bigger mantra than it might have been many years ago. That's number one. Number two is rewinding now back to 2018. There were 2 or 3 friends that I had on Facebook at that time that were posting pictures from their vacations here in San Miguel de Allende in Mexico. And it looked so colorful and so vibrant and so interesting that we decided to vacation here. So we went to Mexico City for 4 or 5 days, and then we came here to San Miguel de Allende for 4 or 5 days. And for me, it was love at first sight. There is something very magical and enchanting and warm about this very, very special town in the middle of Mexico. And so the agency that I was working for at the time had a great perk. And that was every 5 years that you work there, you get a 5-week sabbatical. So because I loved vacation here in San Miguel de Allende so much, that 4 or 5 day initial 2018 vacation, in 2019, I got my first sabbatical and we spent 5 weeks here. And it was then that I knew I feel like home here. I eventually want to move here. Of course, then COVID came, sat out San Miguel de Allende for a couple or 3 years, and then just kept coming back and coming back and coming back and coming back, looking at houses, falling in love with houses, not buying houses, and then ultimately finally decided to do the move in the spring of last year.
And what does it take, other than the emotional? There's got to be a lot of emotional work to go in there to kind of disconnect yourself from, living in the U.S. full time with family and friends. But what does it take, kind of in a mechanics, to put that in motion?
It takes a lot. So first of all, I'm not completely disconnected. So to your point, I've got family, friends, and my work life is primarily still in the US. So I still travel a lot to be with clients in the work that I do. But to answer your question, Ramona, it is a process and it can be complicated. It can be complex. And so in order to help us navigate that process, because look, Ramona, having moved across country a couple of times at least,
Yes. Oh yeah.
that moving is life's worst chore. It just is by its very nature. It sucks. So you're not only moving, but to your point, you're changing countries. So what worked for us is we discovered on Facebook an expat here in San Miguel de Allende who started a very small business. And he takes on approximately 5 clients at a time. And these are people like us who are either thinking about moving to Mexico or who are imminently moving to Mexico. And he is essentially a lot of things. He's a concierge. He's a Sherpa, if you will. He is a connector. He is a networker. He's a hand holder who really helps you navigate that complex and complicated process. And it was so much so, Ramona, that we actually took to putting whiteboards up in our kitchen in North Carolina before we moved here with all the to-dos and action items that we had. And then we wouldn't erase them. We would cross them off with a red marker to get that incremental sense of accomplishment that we were ticking all the things that we needed to tick in order to move here.
That I love that. I love that concept. If you could see around in my office, I have two whiteboards up, and each whiteboard on each side, so there are four. So I keep them up and
Wow.
do the exact same thing. Is like,
Awesome.
who am I talking to today? Where am I going with this? And what's the next step? And I cross them off too, and I don't erase very often. So I got
It works.
it works.
It works.
Yeah. So, what do you, as someone who is a U.S. citizen and you want to buy a home and live in another country, and particularly Mexico, and are you what is your status? I think you had told me maybe you don't have a full time residency status. So, how does that work?
Sure. So we have what's called temporary residency by Mexico. So we are not, to be clear, aiming to get Mexican citizenship. We are US citizens. We pay federal taxes in the United States. We can vote in federal elections in the United States. So we are formally temporary residents of Mexico. So what does that mean? It means we had to go to the Mexican consulate, in our case, in Raleigh, North Carolina. You had to provide them with printed documentation of your financial statements to essentially, I believe, show them, demonstrate to them, prove to them that you're solvent and you're not going to come to the country of Mexico and live off of the Mexican economy. So that's step number one. And then once you get the stamp of approval there, you then finish the process here in Mexico at the local immigration office, where you answer several more questions and you walk out of there with your temporary residency card. So what does that mean for us? It means we have 1 year of temporary residency. At the end of the 1 year, which is coming up in just a few months' time, we can then apply for 3 more years of temporary residency. And then at the end of the 4th year, we can apply for permanent residency status. All that said, Ramona, there are some people, some of our friends here, who got to go straight to permanent residency, didn't have to go through the 1 year and the 3 year. But I believe anecdotally, Ramona, it's because they are full on retired and we are not.
Right. You continue to work in the US and travel around the
Yeah.
world for your work. Okay. So you have friends and friends there now, and some of them you actually have known from another life
Yes.
in the US. So there are a lot of transplants where
Yes.
you are.
Yes, there is a significant, vibrant expat community here, not just Americans. The dominant majority are Americans, a lot of Canadians as well, and then some Europeans, some Aussies, some Kiwis. They're just from all over the world. And Ramona, of all the places we've lived and that I've lived, this is the easiest place to make new friends. Whether you're making friends with expats or whether you're making friends with locals, Mexicans as well. It is just a friendly, warm, inviting place. And nearly everyone, it seems, is looking to expand their circle of friends. So on a daily basis, Ramona, there are conversations. Are you vacationing here? Are you a nomad? How long are you here for? Do you own a place? Are you renting a place? How long have you been coming here? And we have a new friend here. I can't take credit for this amazing soundbite and pithy little quotable quote. He told us shortly after we moved here, there are leapers and there are creepers. There are leapers and there are creepers. We are in the creeper category. So we crept our way to San Miguel de Allende, starting in 2018, coming back. So that's one predominant cohort of the expats who are here. And then there's the leapers. And you hear these stories nearly every single day, Ramona. And so the leapers are the people who are, well, we came down here on vacation and then, my spouse and I looked at each other after 2 days and we're like, let's go look at houses. And then by the end of their 6-day vacation, they've purchased a home. This is
I don't
not
have that nerve.
Yeah, those are the leapers.
Wow.
And there's lots of them. There's lots of them.
What made you fall in love with San Miguel de Allende?
Lots of things. So first of all, Ramona, I know playa. There, as a guy who grew up in LA, who loves the beach and has lived in beach communities for a good part of my life, that's the first question nearly everybody asks. What beach is that near? There's no beach. We are landlocked. So for those of you who may not, your listeners and watchers who may not know, San Miguel de Allende is in the interior of Mexico. So it is approximately a 3.5 hour drive north of Mexico City. It's approximately a mile high. Here comes my Chamber of Commerce spiel for you. It is Spanish colonial. So that's one of the things that made me fall in love with it. Is it's nearly 500 years old, and there are many, many, many cobblestone streets and cobblestone-like, slate-like sidewalks. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And importantly, or the thing that makes most people's ears perk up when I deliver this Chamber of Commerce factoid, for the last 2 straight years, so for 2 consecutive years, Travel and Leisure has named San Miguel de Allende the best city in the world. So it's
That's
the
amazing.
Food. Yeah, it is amazing. It's probably a blessing and a curse in a way. The food is incredible. The art is incredible. The level of musical talent here it is incredible. The culture is incredible. People are friendly. They are warm. And I'll come back, Ramona, to the words that I used a few minutes ago. It's magical and it's enchanting. It's really hard to kind of put your finger on it or to articulate it. But if you come here, and I hope that you will, you're going to catch that vibe almost from the moment you arrive here.
Oh, that's amazing. And to get to the subject that we always include in here, birds, as in birds and nerds, you have told
I
me,
don't know
and
if
you've
you
said,
noticed my lapel, by the way.
oh, very nice. And I have hummingbirds on this today just for you too, by the way.
Awesome.
I love it. I do love it. The birds that you have seen, you have told me, are just incredible, and they're like right outside your back window.
They're outside our back window and they're on our rooftop. So to continue to answer your previous question, another thing that attracts us and a lot of people here is rooftop living is a big deal here. It's a thing. If you look at the MSL listings, the MLS listings rather here in San Miguel de Allende, they all will highlight stunning views from the rooftop, gorgeous rooftop, all that kind of stuff. So they're on our rooftop and they're outside our door. So I'm not a birder. I would describe myself, Ramona, as maybe being bird curious. And on our roof are 2 hummingbird feeders. And it's like Grand Central Station sometimes on the rooftop, all during the day. With what I've noticed are 2 types of hummingbirds. So, and I'm not going to know all the formal names, but there's one group that's kind of green bellied, beautiful, almost emerald green belly, and it shimmers in the sunlight. And then there are white bellied ones. Now, the white-bellied ones and the green-bellied ones don't seem to get along very well. I do see some territorial chirping and conniving going on, especially when it comes to being at the 2 feeders. And regarding the hummingbirds, so I have to put the feeders out in the morning, and then I have to remember to take them in at night, Ramona, because in our townhome development, there is what's called a ring-tailed cat. To be clear, it's not in the cat family. It's more in the raccoon family, but it actually has a ring tail. It likes to attack the feeders, knock the topper off of them, the sipping straws, etc., and then just consume all of the nectar. So I put them in.
You are their source of food there.
I try not to be.
Yeah.
I want to be the source of food for the hummingbirds. And so I have to remember to take those feeders, put them in the rooftop beverage fridge, and then take them out in the morning. So that's on the rooftop. And then our development happens to be right next to a beautiful arroyo. And so I use the Cornell Merlin Bird ID app when I'm out walking the dog, taking a walk. I just open it up, especially when I hear songs, bird songs that are unfamiliar to me. And I'm like, oh, look what's here. I've never seen or heard of this bird before. And the ones that are most prevalent, Ramona, are the great kiskadee. So it goes almost like a rooster sound, but that's where the kiskadee name
Oh,
comes
I don't
from.
think I know that one.
You'll have to look it up,
Yeah, I
but they're
will.
quite
I'll put pictures of it and I'll find video and put it in here. Yeah.
awesome. There are a lot of them here, and then there are at least two or three egrets that are in the arroyo, and because there is a stream of water there, and they're beautiful just to observe and to watch them flying around. But yeah, having never lived in Mexico before, it's opening up, a whole new sense of curiosity around the bird life down here.
You also said you saw the oh, I can't remember which one, the bright red one,
The
vermilion.
vermilion flycatcher.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's Ramona, it's almost like it's plugged in. It's like it's almost like it's plugged into a socket because the red is just it's so luminescent.
So I've talked to a lot of people about birds, and I am not a scientist. I don't know all the scientific names. I just know that what they brought to me in my life, and mostly around COVID, when I started really paying attention,
Mhm.
is just the beauty and the peace and the amazement to watch, nature and to see the colors, all those things. But I opened my eyes to them. I hadn't. They have, birds are always around us, right? But until you really open your eyes and start really paying attention, they just kind of become part of the scenery, so to speak. But
Mhm.
now I will be sitting in my office and I'll hear a bird and I will hear it. It's not like it's just making noise in the background. I'll hear it. My husband has started hearing it too after all these years, and he's not as crazy about birds like I am. And as soon as he hears it, he goes, okay. And he knows I'm going to go grab my camera and go out and try to find it, or grab my phone so I can do exactly what you're saying with the bird app, which is listen to the song and identify a new bird. There's just something about it that makes me feel in touch with nature more than I had before.
Mhm. For sure. And similar situation in this household regarding my husband. He's not so much into it, but when I share them with him, he does have at least some degree of curiosity and interest about it. But same thing, when I hear a new bird song, hopefully I get the app open quickly enough so that it will hear it and then identify it properly. But for example, Ramona, in the morning when I go upstairs to the rooftop to put out the hummingbird feeders, I take a seat on the rooftop and I just watch them have breakfast. And it's just such a great way to just become zen at the
Mhm.
beginning of the day and watch these incredibly fascinating creatures
It's
just
that's the
eat,
exact way I feel.
eat,
Yeah,
fly.
yeah. Oh, I always wish I could fly after I watch a bird and in flight. I wish I could fly. And I also think that's fascinating. And it's going to be the subject of another podcast soon, which is I'm going to talk to somebody at the Jet Propulsion Lab about the mechanics of flying. And it's come up in some of the other podcasts where we talk about the bones and their hollow. We all have hollow bones, but our bones are filled with marrow and birds are filled with air which
Mm,
helps them fly.
mm.
But I want to talk about that a little bit more because I'm fascinated. If I could do
But,
anything, I would that would be my magic power, fly.
yeah, and certainly, some people when they're dreaming can do that,
Yeah,
of course.
absolutely.
But it's not just the bones, Ramona. I think it's the brains too.
Brains
How
are
does how does this teeny
yeah,
weeny little hummingbird know that I've put out the feeders and
yeah,
that I'm going to come back to that rooftop way up high and
yeah.
eat? How did their
I
tiny little
think that's
brains know?
crazy too. I don't know the answer to that, and I meant to ask my scientist friends over at Audubon Society about that, but I'm the cold thing kept me from giving them a call. But I am very curious about that too, and that's where science comes in. So it not only opens up your mind to kind of the nature of it and
Mhm.
appreciating the nature, but for curious people, you start asking different questions. And Yeah, I'm now all things birds. I mean, it's like if I see a bird, I immediately start trying to figure out what it is. But I also go, oh, how could that live there? And on one of the other podcasts, I talked to Bill Griffith, who you know well
I
as well.
watched, I listened. Yes.
Yes, and we talked about the sanderlings. And one thing that I learned too is that they migrate and they breed up in Canada. So how do they? I really still want to know. How do they know
It's a
where to go?
mystery.
Yeah, what is that nature part of it and science part that's blended together and continue? And then I did one with a guy from the museum, American Museum of Natural History, on the birds are dinosaurs. So you learn that they survived 66 million years ago when an asteroid hit the Earth. So there's so many amazing things that are part of this kind of love of it that started with just going, oh, that's really pretty, you know?
And and it's the science of things, Ramona, that makes me love not just the bird curious part that we've talked about, but also love the work that I do. I I love the intellectual challenge and as a former local TV news guy, uh, the intellectual challenge. Who I'm a complete generalist, but the intellectual challenge, and this is why I loved covering it so much at CNBC too. The intellectual challenge and the stimulation of taking complex science into the funnel, complex science, super duper complex technology, brilliant ideas that I never in a million years would be able to come up with. And then putting that into that funnel and helping it come out in a way that people like you and me, and maybe your podcast listeners, can comprehend and understand and value and appreciate, and not to mention the goodness of it all. The goodness that this is being done to help humankind. It's being done to address problems that need to be solved and to apply rigorous, brilliant science and technology. And this is why I love the work that I do in the life sciences.
I love hearing that, and I love that you are doing that because I think science is important for all of us to understand, appreciate, and know how it helps us in our lives. And we need people like you to keep helping tell those stories because it can seem like it's over the head for
Yeah.
many of us.
Mhm.
But if you find that way in, it really, again, just opens that big door and you learn a lot more. And I really appreciate the work you do.
Thank you. And it's the reason that I have this second career, Ramona. It's because the good news is that the science and the technology and the ideas are getting increasingly complex. And that raises the challenge of being able to communicate that in a way that we can all appreciate, value, and understand. And there's a great need within the life sciences sector to help them bust the jargon that none of us can comprehend, the acronyms, the abbreviations, the 6-syllable words, and all of it that need to be simplified and put into plain, simple English so that I can bug you back in the day to get on TV in a minute 30 and to explain to a generalist investor audience what this is, why it's important, how it's actionable and potentially investable, and how it's going to make a difference.
In hindsight, having a 2-hour show, Power Lunch, I should have given you at least a minute 45.
All right, let the record show.
I stand corrected. I'll go back in time. Mike, thank you so much. It was great talking to you. And I am so delighted for you that you have found a place that gives you the peace and it allows you to continue to do your work. So enjoy. Best to you and best to John.
Ramona, thank you so much for having me. It's all about La Buena Vida, the good life.
That was my conversation with Mike Huckman, expat, friend, and principal of the Huckman Group. I'm Ramona Schindelheim. Thanks for listening.